Hi, and thank you for tuning in to the Daily Dose for Spiritual Growth. Today we get to finish chapter 41 of the book of Genesis. This week we've been talking a lot about dreams. We've been talking a lot about when unsettling things happen, where do we turn? We've been talking about the power of God and how he can use us in miraculous ways if we're willing and able. We've talked about the importance of pointing people to God, not taking the credit for ourselves, and a whole lot of other stuff. But today I want to finish out this chapter. I'm going to read it to you. We're going to start in verse 37. I'm going to read it, then we'll talk a little bit about it. Let's see what happens with Pharaoh's dreams. Joseph's suggestions, verse 37, were well received by Pharaoh and his officials. And so Pharaoh asked his officials, "Can we find anyone else like this man, so obviously filled with the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is as intelligent or wise as you are. You will be in charge of my court, and all my people will take orders from you. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a rank higher than yours." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the entire land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh removed his signet ring from his hand and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in fine linen clothing and hung a gold chain around his neck. Then he had Joseph ride in the chariot reserved for his second in command, and wherever Joseph went, the command shouted, "Kneel down." So Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. And Pharaoh said to him, "I am Pharaoh, but no one will lift a hand or foot in the entire land of Egypt without your approval." And Pharaoh gave Joseph a new Egyptian name, Zephanath-Paneah. He also gave him a wife whose name was Asenath. She was the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. So Joseph took charge of the entire land of Egypt. He was 30 years old when he began serving in the court of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And when Joseph left Pharaoh's presence, he inspected the entire land of Egypt. And as predicted, for 7 years, the land produced bumper crops. During those years, Joseph gathered all the crops grown in Egypt, and he stored the grain from the surrounding fields in the cities. He piled up huge amounts of grain, like sand on the seashore. Finally, he stopped keeping records because there was so much to measure. During this time before the first of the famine years, 2 sons were born to Joseph and his wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On. Joseph named his older son Manasseh, for he said, "God has made me forget all of my troubles and everyone in my father's family." Joseph named his second son Ephraim, for he said, "God has made me fruitful in the land of my grief." After the 7 years of bumper crops throughout the land of Egypt, they came to an end. And then the 7 years of famine began just as Joseph had predicted. The famine also struck all the surrounding countries, but throughout Egypt there was plenty of food. Eventually, however, the famine spread throughout the land of Egypt as well. And when the people cried out to Pharaoh for food, he told them, "Go to Joseph and do whatever he tells you." So with the severe famine everywhere, Joseph opened up the storehouses and distributed grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout the land of Egypt. And people from all around came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe throughout the world. This is crazy again. I mean, we shouldn't be shocked by this, but if you put yourself in this story, how amazing, how remarkable that everything that Joseph predicted came to be to a T. And this just shows the power of God. I mean, literally, what an amazing story where just a few days ago in chapter 40, we found Joseph in prison, falsely accused of a crime with no hope by earthly standards. And here, just a few chapters later, he now is literally placed in second in command for the entire land of Egypt. Only God can do that. Only God can put us in positions and remove us from positions and orchestrate things. He is in complete control. And so when our circumstances don't look the way we want, we need to remember that God is in control and he is capable of doing far more than we could ever even imagine. What I think is interesting, way back at the beginning of what I read today, it says that Pharaoh recognized that the Spirit of God was within Joseph. And so I want us just to pause today. Do the people in our life recognize the Spirit of God within us? Do your neighbors, your coworkers, your family members, your in-laws, your outlaws, the people that you interact with at the grocery store, by the way that you speak, by the way that you appear, by the way that you act, by the way that you treat others, by the topic of your conversations, can people sense the Spirit of God within you? You see, we are supposed to be walking billboards for the Lord. You know, we read in Colossians just last week at our final dinner and devos that we are Christ's representatives in this world, that we literally are walking examples of Jesus to people. And so when I read this passage, I'm so moved, I'm so challenged, I'm so inspired. I'm also so convicted to think that same question for myself. When people encounter me, do they sense the Spirit of God in me? Now, in no way are we striving for perfection. We are very human. If you haven't had a reminder, look around. We're flawed. We're failures at times. We mess up. We don't always represent Christ well. But across the board, can people sense that the Spirit of God lives within you? And if your answer is you don't know, if your answer is no, what might the Holy Spirit want to speak to you today about how you can better represent Him? A great example we talked about this week was by spending time with Him. You know, Joseph had a lot of idle time in prison. It's interesting here, it says that he was 30 years old when he was put into this position of power in Egypt. If you go back to the beginning in Genesis 37, we know that he was 17 years old when he was initially sold into slavery. That's 13 years that Joseph spent in slavery and imprisoned in Egypt. It's a lot of time. He could have used that time to get bitter. He could have used that time to be a victim. He could have used that time to do a lot of things, but as evidenced in his life, we see that he took that time to spend with God, that he allowed God to renew his heart, that he kept God the authority in his life. And so if you want to better represent him, if you want to have people recognize the Spirit of God within you, it's so crucial that you spend time with God, that you spend time in his presence, that you spend time in his word, that you spend time in conversation with him. And so this Saturday, take some time. What a beautiful start with this daily dose. But we did this together. I want to encourage you now to take some personal time, some private time, and just talk to God. Allow him to talk to you. Listen. Be open-hearted to what he might say to you today, and be obedient in what commands he might give you. But spend some time enjoying his presence. If you're in the Shrewsbury area, I do want to invite you to Shrewsbury Assembly tomorrow. We have a guest speaker. It's going to be awesome. Pastor Bradley Stahl is going to be coming, and he is actually going to be preaching from the next two chapters, Genesis 42 and 43. You're not going to want to miss it as we continue the story of Joseph. Otherwise, we'll be back with you next Monday for another daily dose for spiritual growth. We'll see you then.